You are listening to episode 2 of The Calm Competitor. And now that we've mastered the physical reset, we're diving into the mental blueprint. Today, we reveal why your brain can't tell the difference between doing something and vividly imagining it, and how you can use that to your advantage. The practice run your brain already ran. Picture this. It is the night before the biggest math test of your year. You are lying in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. The room is dark. Outside, somewhere, a car passes. And in your head, something starts playing. A slideshow you did not ask for. You see yourself sitting down at the desk. You see the paper landing in front of you. You see your name written at the top, and then your hand freezes. The pen just sits there. The first problem stares up at you like a question written in a language you suddenly cannot read. You are not asleep. You are not in a math class. But something in your body is treating that imagined moment as if it is completely real. Your palms are damp, your chest is tight, and here is what is strange. Nothing is happening. There is no test, there is no pen, there is no paper, there is only a ceiling, a dark room, and a scene your brain invented. So what exactly is your nervous system responding to? Most people, if you ask them what the brain does with imagination, would say something like, "Oh, it stores images. Like photos in an album. You picture something, and the brain files it away." The imagining and the doing are totally separate activities. That seems right. Thinking about jumping is not the same as jumping. Thinking about a lemon is not the same as biting one, right? And almost, that's correct. Neuroscientists studying how the brain processes action discovered something in the 1990s that they had not quite expected. When a person performs a physical movement, say reaching for a glass of water, a set of neurons in the motor cortex, the region of your brain that plans and controls movement, fires in a specific sequence. That pattern is the neural signature of that movement. It is like a fingerprint, specific to that action. Here is where it gets interesting. When a person only imagines reaching for the glass, vividly, with detail, without moving at all, a large portion of that same sequence fires. Not a different region, not a vague, general activation. The same, specific pattern. The brain, at the level of motor planning, does not fully distinguish between doing and vividly imagining doing. And it almost works as an explanation, until you press on it. Because if the brain activates the same motor patterns when you imagine something, then athletes who vividly imagine their best performances should actually get better, not just more confident. Actually, measurably better. That seems like a pretty big claim. In 1992, a researcher named Guang Yue at the Cleveland Clinic ran an experiment. He asked one group of people to physically exercise a finger muscle, a small, simple muscle in the hand, for several weeks. He asked a second group to only imagine doing those same exercises. They sat still. They did not move their fingers at all. They simply pictured the contractions. After the trial, both groups were measured for muscle strength. The physical exercise group got stronger. You expected that. But the imagination-only group also got stronger, by about 22%, compared to a control group that did nothing. 22% stronger, without moving. Sit with that for a second. A muscle grew stronger because a brain imagined the movement. No protein synthesis from the imagination, no actual contraction of muscle fibers. But the neural pathways that control that muscle have been exercised so thoroughly through imagination that the signals those pathways send got meaningfully stronger. So the question is no longer whether mental rehearsal does something. The question is, what is it specifically doing? Here's the first piece of the actual mechanism. When you move your body, throw a ball, type a sentence, play a chord on a guitar, your brain does not send one signal and wait. It runs a continuous loop. It sends a movement command to your muscles, and simultaneously, a copy of that command goes to a part of your brain called the cerebellum, which sits at the back of your skull, roughly the size of a fist. The cerebellum compares the predicted outcome of the movement to the actual outcome, and sends correctional signals in real time, millisecond by millisecond. This loop is what allows you to reach for something without having to consciously calculate the angle of your elbow. It is what lets a pitcher throw a fastball with precision in a fraction of a second. The cerebellum is running the feedback loop faster than conscious thought. Some call this muscle memory. Now here is what vivid mental rehearsal does to that loop. When you imagine a movement, really imagine it, with sensory detail, not just a vague picture, but a full simulation. The feeling of the grip, the timing of the release, the weight of your body shifting. The cerebellum still runs. The motor cortex still fires. The internal model of the movement still executes. What does not happen is the outgoing signal to the muscles reaching its full amplitude. There is a suppression mechanism, a kind of brake, that prevents the imagined movement from becoming an actual one. But everything upstream of that brake, the planning, the timing, the coordination, runs. You are practicing the software without running the hardware, and software can be improved by running it. The pathways that coordinate the movement get used. The timing sequences get rehearsed. The loop gets tighter. This is why the finger muscle group got stronger. Not because their muscles grew without contracting, but because the neural command signals got more precise. The brain learned to send a cleaner, more efficient signal because it had practiced sending it thousands of times in simulation. Which raises the next question. The muscle experiment is one thing, but what about fear? What about the sweaty palms and the tight chest before the math test? That is not a motor coordination problem. So why does the same principle apply? This is the second layer. Your brain has a structure called the amygdala. Two small clusters of neurons, one on each side, roughly almond-shaped, tucked deep inside the temporal lobe. The amygdala is sometimes described as the brain's alarm system. When it detects something threatening, a loud sound, a predator, the face of someone who looks angry, it triggers the body's stress response instantly, before conscious awareness can even process what happened. This is efficient design for survival. You flinch before you know why. But here is the problem. The amygdala is not very good at distinguishing between real threats and imagined ones. It responds to the content of what is being processed, not the source. Which means, when you lie in bed and vividly imagine failing the test, your amygdala looks at that detailed, sensory-rich simulation and responds as if it is live data from the real world. It triggers cortisol. It raises your heart rate. It tightens your muscles. The body treats the imagined scenario as if preparation for that scenario is urgently required. This is why anxiety works the way it does. Anxious people often have very active imaginations. They run detailed simulations of catastrophic outcomes, and their amygdalas respond to those simulations with full alarm signals, repeatedly, across days and weeks. The body is not reacting to what's happening. It is reacting to what is being rehearsed in imagination. Now connect this to mental rehearsal done deliberately. When a student-athlete systematically imagines a successful performance, not vague success, but specific sensory success, the weight of the ball in the hand, the sound of the court, the feeling of the first step executed cleanly, the amygdala processes that too. The simulation is positive. The amygdala learns, through repetition, that this context, this set of sensory cues, this environment, is associated with competence, not danger. The alarm signal gets quieter, not because the situation has become less important, but because the brain has run enough successful simulations that it has updated its threat assessment. You have, in effect, practiced not being afraid, and practice works on fear the same way it works on movement. Here is the click. The brain does not have a clean boundary between simulation and reality. It cannot afford one. Simulation is how it plans, predicts, and learns. The same neural hardware that processes a real event processes a vivid imagined one. This is not a bug. It is the architecture. Which means mental rehearsal is not a psychological trick. It is not positive thinking in the motivational poster sense. It is not telling yourself you will do well and hoping the confidence helps. It is literal practice. The motor pathways are being used. The cerebellum is running its feedback loop. The amygdala is updating its threat model. The coordination sequences are being tightened. The fear response is being retrained. When a student-athlete walks into a high-pressure moment and feels somehow calmer than expected, not because the pressure is gone, but because something in the situation feels strangely familiar, That is because it is familiar. The brain has been there before. It ran the simulation, many times, in careful sensory detail. And now the real event is, in the most literal neurological sense, not the first time. The performance you are about to give has, from the brain's perspective, already happened. What you are doing now is the confirmation. Go back to the ceiling, the dark room, the night before the test. Your brain is running a simulation right now, whether you ask it to or not. That is not a choice. The only choice is which simulation. The one where the pen freezes. The amygdala is practicing that one. It is getting better at it. Each replay makes the threat signal a little more automatic, the hesitation a little more grooved. Or the other one, the one where you sit down and you write your name, and the first problem is just a problem, one you have seen before, in a slightly different form, that you know how to approach. Where your breathing is even because somewhere in the architecture of your nervous system, this moment has already gone well, many times, in the hours before the test even began. You can choose which practice your brain gets tonight. The ceiling is still there, the room is still dark, but the rehearsal space is open. Mental rehearsal prepares you for the future, but what happens when panic strikes in the present moment? Join us in episode 3, where we'll explore a simple sensory trick that forces a spiraling brain back into reality.